Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Business Live. Coming tonight in the bulletin, GIPC assures foreign projects suspended as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic will resume next year. We'll hear from the CEO, Yofi Grant. Also coming up, the World Health Organization is opening borders to commercial flights against COVID-19 infection risks. We'll have the latest. And we'll hear why the delay in the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area agreement could actually be positive news for the continent. Those and other stories coming up in this half hour of Business News. Welcome back to the bulletin, everyone. My name is Darryl Powell. In our first story tonight, Chief Executive of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, that is Yofi Grant, has revealed that all the major foreign projects suspended will resume next year. Now, some major foreign direct investments, including the assembling of vehicles by automobile giants, the Beach Drive project, and the Aka Energy Oil Exploration Project have been suspended because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's Mr. Grant, who has been speaking on investments amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
In every economy, you'd like to also build your own, using your own. And so you'd realize that for a lot of developed countries, savings is a very important component of the financing mix in the economy. But we have a very low savings rate. In fact, our savings rate is much lower than even the regional average. And so we need to understand the impact of investment on the economy. Now, investment may be from inside, if we have built the capital for it, or from outside. And our history, if you look through our economic history, right from the days of Kwame Nkrumah, it was mainly statism. The state built up the infrastructure and economic infrastructure, built the factories, built the offices. The state controlled everything because, of course, we had just come out of colonialism, and then we were not very happy of being dominated by anybody. And then after that, the ideological experimentation changed a bit. So we had a period where we went back into energizing private sector, and that's when we saw what could potentially have been Ghanaian magnates come on stream in the economy. So you had FK Poku, you have Kowus Motors, you had quite a number of big players in the market, you know, and they built industries. They actually were assembling cars. We were assembling Tata cars, we were assembling Leyland Motors, we were assembling VWs, we were assembling Passat, etc. in Ghana. So we had taken those steps to build them. And then, of course, in the poor political experimentation or ideological experimentation, all those were wiped away. We had Tata breweries. We have a Ghanaian indigenous company. We had BMSA doing cigarettes, manufacturing cigarettes in Ghana. So it's not like we've not been there before. We understand it, that we can use our own to build our own. And had they kept on and been allowed to flourish, I bet that would have probably had some billionaires by now in Ghana who could now have been investing in other countries in the sub-region.
Mr. Grant, I mean, on 2019, how was FDIs doing as in the end of year, going into Q1? How was it doing?
By end of year, we were extremely optimistic. In fact, the first quarter of 2020 saw a 400% increase.
Wow. Compared
to the first quarter of 2019. And then, of course, we also had a number of projects that were going to take off phenomenally. Not just change the economy, but even change the landscape of Accra and Kumasi and our major cities. And as the government has always indicated, this was the year of roads. So we're massively going to develop the roads and also massively develop some infrastructure. Of course, I'm sure you know of the Accra Marine Drive project, which would have significantly changed the coastline of Ghana and reinforced Ghana as a hub for regional tourism. We know the trade fair was also undergoing some new developments. There's the middle of the world, center of the world project somewhere in Tema. You know, so we had all these things that were in advanced stage of discussion and development. We even had the Accra Sky Train, which would have been the first sky train, I believe, in West Africa. And these things do a lot for your image and also for your morale. When you see a lot of development taking place, people are more engaged, they're happy.
All right, so be sure to catch the full conversation actually happening on the business edition of PM Express later today at 9 p.m. with Aboagye-Wiafe, the CEO of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. We'll be talking about investments amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Moving on, as African countries begin to reopen borders and airspaces, the World Health Organization is sounding a warning. It says it is crucial that governments take effective measures to mitigate the risk of a surge in infections due to resumption of commercial flights and airport operations. My colleague, Ebenezer Sabute, has been following the address by the WHO Africa Regional Health Director. He joins me via Zoom from his home. Eben, great to see you tonight. So what is the WHO communicating in this address? Eben, if you can unmute your Zoom, yeah, that would be absolutely perfect so we can hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can.
So what the WHO is trying to communicate here is that it is very vital for the airspace to be opened again because goods will have to be moving, businesses will have to be moving internationally and all that. But we must also take care of certain, precautions. So it warns of spike in numbers, and they are looking at the fact that if there's going to be spike in numbers that are going to be imported cases, do we have the health capacities to deal with it? So he spoke about the fact that our health facilities, are they ready to deal with spike in numbers with regards to imported cases? That is one. It also spoke about the fact that how many of these countries have measures at their exit points, i.e. airports and also our borders, that will check that people who are coming in have followed all the health and safety protocols such that they will not go about transmitting the disease or the virus to other people as well in the community. We spoke about the contact tracing systems and other systems that are being put in place to check whether everyone will be, measured accordingly so that they don't go about giving the virus to the people in the community. So these are some of the concerns that the WHO is raising. Yes, they are welcoming the decisions by some African countries to open the borders, to resume commercial flights and all that. But it is raising this red flag that precautions or preventive measures should be strictly adhered to. And then also we ensure that we put in all the necessary measures that will ensure that people are not going to be infected, uncontrollably before we open up the airspace for commercial business.
Did the WHO give any guidelines as to precautions that countries can take in reopening their airports and their borders?
Yes, so some of the guidelines, or let me say recommendations, includes the fact that before a commercial flight is landing, or before a country decides to open its borders, they should ensure that at the airport there will be new systems in place to check the travelers. And these new systems will not be the old system where you come and they take just your details and then go. But also, your health systems must be checked. So, for instance, whereas formerly when you are traveling, your health status is taken all right, but it's not as a priority. The WHO is saying that this time around, health status of travelers should be a priority for every country. So, yes, we may open our borders and we'll say, yes, the people are healthy and they should come in, but we should trace their health status, not only on COVID-19, but any other infectious disease which is likely to, disturb our health system. And then also, the WHO is warning that the new normal should be adhered strictly. So the new normal that you and I know, wearing our face masks, our face and nose masks, practicing physical and social distancing, should be adhered strictly. We shouldn't take chances, and we shouldn't say that because we've accepted that the virus is with us, so we'll let our guard down. No, this is not a time to let our guard down. Yes, we can open flights, we can open for flights commercially and all that, but we shouldn't let our guard down. This is the time to adhere strictly to the safety protocols from the WHO itself.
Right, and the WHO, even in that address, admits the toll the lockdowns, the restrictions have had on air travel. It has been giving out some very sober figures.
Yeah, some of these figures are very significant. It mentioned the fact that when you look at international flights, we are going to have a decline or a reduction in international flights of about 69%. And domestically, we are going to have 59%. That's domestic air flight. And when you look at this, there's going to be a loss of revenue of about $6 billion. And this is $1 billion is classified as passenger revenue. So passenger revenue, that is you and I, our flight ticket that we'll be buying and whatever purchases that we'll be doing in flight, classify it as passenger revenue, which is about $6 billion. The WHO also, in collaboration with the United Nations Economic Division, also did an analysis to look at job losses. And they came up with the fact that there's going to be about half, a percentage of number of people who are working in the aviation industry. So there's some 3.1 billion people, that are going to lose their job. And this is a significant number when it comes to job losses, because you and I know what job loss, employment issues on our continent are. So these are some of the numbers that the WHO has been putting out. Even though it's welcoming the fact that some countries are going to open their borders, it is saying that let's be careful of this and let's look out for some of these things. It also mentions some of the countries that have already resumed, commercial operations, like Cameroon, the Zambia, the Equatorial Guinea, and all that. These countries have already resumed commercial operation, but it is also giving them a red flag that they should be careful, because the fact that you open up your borders, the fact that you open for commercial operations and all that means that people are going to come from all walks of the of the world, everywhere, and you don't know their situation, so they should be careful with whoever they admit into their countries.
And that obviously would affect passengers in terms of the infection rates if the proper safety protocols are not put in place. Thank you so much, Eben Sabuti. That informed the WHO, sounding a warning as countries reopen their airports, their borders to commercial flights. Thanks very much indeed. Well, talk about commercial flights and travel for that matter. The EU has indicated that it excluded Ghana from its travel list because the country failed to meet requirements in the management of COVID-19 cases. Currently, our case count stands at over 18,000. Yes, and 117 people have lost their lives to the virus. Here is JoyNews with more on his correspondence with the EU and the impact of the travel ban on businesses.
European Union office in Ghana. The decision was based on how governments around the world have managed their respective COVID-19 cases. The head of the European Union delegation to Ghana, Diana Consia, in an email to Joy Business noted that their decision was based on how the epidemiological situation in Ghana, containment measures including physical distancing, as well as economic and social consideration. There should have also been a decreasing trend in new cases over the period of 14 days. All these requirements, it looks like Ghana failed to meet it. The country was also faulted of the overall response to COVID-19 management, taking into account the availability of information. The European Union, in the mail to Joy Business, also argued that the country should have met all these requirements before it would have allowed its citizens to travel to the European Union. The head of the European Union delegation to Ghana was, however, quick to add that these measures will be reviewed in 2 weeks' time. So maybe if at that time Ghana's situation has improved, then we could allow the citizens to fly into the European Union. But if the restriction is even lifted today, there's another hurdle that you have if you are traveling to the UK. And this is because the British government has announced that anyone that arrives in the country should be prepared to be quarantined for 14 days before you can go about doing your normal business. So imagine you were flying to London for some business transaction for just a week. Well, that meeting can only come on after you've been quarantined for about 14 days. Well, countries like China and even US were not included in this 15-country list that could enter the European Union. A careful look at the numbers show that new cases are actually going up. Well, for now, it is not clear how this would influence the actions of the European Union. However, others have argued that it was more of an economic decision than just how countries have managed their COVID-19 cases.
Director of the Africa Center for International Trade and Development, Isaac Hubert Atta, says the delay in the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Agreement may actually be positive news. Yesterday, the 1st of July, should have been Africa's big trade reset, a historic deal to smash down tariff barriers within Africa. But now that is on hold because of setbacks that has got to do with the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the slow pace of negotiations. Earlier, Mr. Arthur told me that African governments should rather use this time to finalize outstanding issues.
Or bad, somehow it's good news. Even though I understand that we can't wait to really open the trading block, the continental trading block. But however, you must understand that the question is 1st July. If we had started this, a few days back, which is about 3 days ago, on 1st July 2020, will African countries be ready, to trade? That's the major question. A lot of the countries are still trying to put in place the necessary infrastructures, build the local capacity and all of that. And these are things that, most countries are still lagging behind. So I believe that even if the 1st July had, taken off, I'm sure a lot of the countries will not be ready in terms of, both the soft infrastructure, the hard, infrastructure, the various systems and all of that, I'm sure. So this presents an opportunity for countries that are still in the process of putting in place these infrastructural development and the various systems to do so whilst we wait for, the AFCFTA Secretariat to announce, the starting date for.
Well, I can understand the issues with the pandemic being a setback, but the issues with negotiations, the fact that even at this point we have not been able to reach consensus. We shouldn't use the border as an excuse. We can discuss this over the internet.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, I was part of an AU investment negotiations capacity building, meeting the whole of last week, and it came up. And what they are saying is negotiations are still ongoing. They have given them a deadline, which is the end of this year, by December 2020, for the negotiations for the second phase, of the AFCFTA to end. So negotiations have not been blocked. Negotiations are still ongoing. Countries have been given the opportunity to use, the virtual opportunities that we have to keep on with preparing their negotiation instruments and all of that. So they've been given a deadline up to December 2020 to conclude the phase 2 negotiations. So I don't think the COVID-19, yes, we always say that even when we're having the physical negotiations, I mean, how smooth were they? I mean, you need to do a lot of lobbying, a lot of, negotiations, start discussing with other countries to make sure that whatever agreement you have cuts across. But it's a pandemic. It's everybody is affected, but we are lucky to have this medium to be able to still go on. So I think negotiations, we can't sit down and then not take advantage of that.
And finally, to your point about this perhaps being good news and helping us to re-strategize, what should be the focus as we look towards getting this operational?
Yes, so as we are waiting, let's still continuing. I mean, looking at Ghana, we are still embarking on a number of initiatives, trying to get ready for the implementation. I mean, based on our assessment, I don't think we have really gotten there fully yet. There's still a lot of things we need to put in place. So let's continue to focus on some of the measures. I mean, building local capacity is key. Otherwise, once the trading date takes off, I'm telling you, a lot of our SMEs and small, most of our fragile industries are going to be wiped out by most of these giant economies. So it's an opportunity to put in place policies that are going to help drive the capacity of our SMEs to be able to face these competitions. This is the opportunity. You don't need COVID-19 to go before you focus on that. So I think we can be looking at that and then also develop our infrastructures as we've started.
Some perspective there from the Executive Director of the Africa Center for International Trade and Development. We have some good news. I'll tell you about that in a bit. First, though, poor drying, high moisture content causes of high post-harvest losses in Ghana. Thankfully, new technology is being explored to safeguard our farm produce. There's more in this report filed by Prince Apia.
24-year-old Emmanuel Ofori is a maize farmer whose 4-acre land is due for harvesting. He cultivates yellow corn because of its high demand and prices in recent times. With this farm, I will harvest, drive them well, and store until maize is scarce on the market. Then I sell them. Now, a bucket is 25 cedis, but I will wait and sell at 30 cedis in the lean season.
Now the baku is 25.
The biggest headache, perhaps for Emmanuel and other farmers in Ghana, arises after harvesting, that's the drying and storage. Large quantities of farm produce goes bad when these are poorly handled, depending on the weather, leaving the farmer with little for only subsistence after all the sweat and toil. Statistics show at least 30% of farm produce in Ghana goes waste annually. Senior lecturer at the Department of Agricultural Engineering, Joseph Opon Akowa, explains why it is so.
These moisture content is the amount of water in the produce. At harvest, it is about 25 thereabout. And so what it means is that because the water is in the maize, you cannot keep it for a long time, so you have to dry it. And so we can talk about drying losses. So you're not able to dry it effectively, so you cannot store this produce for a long time. So one has to do with lack of technology. In this sense, you are talking about drying, facilities. And this has been a major challenge, particularly because most of our farmers are smallholder farmers who obviously may not have the means to afford these big drying systems that are centralized in their communities. So one way we can avoid or prevent post-harvest losses is to make small drying facilities that are not so expensive available to these farmers.
All right, so that was the report filed by Prince Apia, and that has won him some special recognition. Prince joins us via Zoom. If you can unmute your Zoom, Prince, so we can have that conversation. First of all, how does it feel to be given special recognition for this story?
Yeah, Daryl, it feels very good. I'm very excited about it. I'm happy that the work that we do are all the time being recognized.
That's exciting to hear. Congratulations to you. But let's move to the story itself. The difficulties farmers have when it comes to storing their produce. Post-harvest losses are on the high, and so you have been engaging them. At least you did in that report. What do they tell you about their challenges?
So the main challenges, the kind of investment they've had to put into their production all year round. And at the end of the day, they watch these investments go to waste because they are unable to get proper drying mechanisms to dry these crops for storage so that they can sell when the market is good for such, crops to be sold, like maize, for instance. And most often they see their crops destroying, I should say. It gets spoiled because it is left in the mercy of the weather, and because there are no means of processing or storing them for future market, or making them more better for consumption or for the market. So it is a worrying thing that anytime you engage them, you get from the farmers.
So thankfully, you reported on this drying technology that could actually help the farmers. Tell me about this technology and why we need to invest more in such technology to help us reduce those numbers when it comes to post-harvest losses.
So there are two technologies that were featured in the story. One is the grain meat by one Sesi Technologies. He is based in Kumasi. And the other one is a solar dryer. That is also manufactured by a local producer who is based in Idra. So I put the two together. And the first one, the grain meat, ensures that the moisture content of the grains, all types of grains, are reduced to the internationally accepted standards that keeps the grain for a longer period of time for storage. And then the solar dryer also looks at how the mechanism can use solar to dry these grains after harvesting so that they can be stored for a longer period of time for processing and other things that they need to be used for, so that at least the farmer can also benefit from their investment after they're unable to sell immediately after harvesting.
Great. Thank you so much for speaking with us tonight, and congratulations once again on your special recognition for story. Great job, Prince.
Thank you very much.
Right. Welcome. Thanks very much for watching Business Live tonight. My name is Darryl Powell with BBC News. Up next.